Dr. Tamika Curtis Holloway. She hails from Louise, Mississippi, has dedicated 20 plus years to public health. She champions community wellness through education and prevention with degrees from Alcorn State University and Jackson State University, including a doctorate in public health. She's a leader in HIV care and prevention. Dr. Curtis Holloway's visionary leadership extends to grassroots initiatives, empowering individuals to make informed health choices, engaging with community leaders, and advocating for underserved areas. She's a respected voice in public health. Her career exemplifies commitment to community vitality and health, making her an inspiration for change in healthier lifestyle. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Tamika. Thank you. So to our live audience and our streaming family, welcome to SIP and Soirée. This event is hosted by none other than my brother's keeper. So this event is a chance to engage in an open dialogue where we want to discuss uterine fibroids. We want to talk about HIV. We want to talk about sexual health and other various women health topics in a very supportive environment. I have the honor of introducing two dynamic women, and we will hear from them, ask a few questions, and just enjoy today. First, I will introduce to you Sharonda Minor-Cox. Sharonda is Vice President of Operations for Electric Works, Inc. She's also part-time owner of an great event design in the artistry and exquisite event center downtown Jackson. Beyond her impressive career, Sharonda is dedicated to giving back. She serves on the development committee for the Methodist Children's Home of Mississippi and is an active member of the Junior League of Jackson. When she's not busy, and I know that's hard to say, but when she's not busy making waves in the business world and the community, Sharonda cherishes time with her family. So ladies, gentlemen, family, friends, we introduce to you Sharonda Minor-Cox. I love the saying, saving the best for last. Dr. Jaylene Smith. Dr. Jaylene Smith is a board-certified obstetrician and gynecologist at Jackson Hines Comprehensive Health Center. She also serves as a maternal health consultant for the Mississippi State Department of Health. She's committed to diversity and inclusion, maximizing maternal and infant care outcomes. She's co-founded SIM Foundation of Hope, recognized as a top block, and honored by Continental Who's Who. Dr. Sims is an advocate for healthcare equity, sexual health, and maternal care through active involvement in medical associations. She's honored for her work by various organizations and shares her expertise through social media. Dr. Sims holds degrees from esteemed universities and enjoys family and friends, family life with her husband and her daughter. Ladies and gentlemen, I introduce to you Dr. Jaylene Sims. So I'm going to ask a series of questions, and we just look to you, we help to you for expertise. So this question I'm going to ask is one question, but we want both of you all to answer the question. How did you, Sharonda, become an advocate for women's health, and what has empowered you to do so?
So back in so I have suffered from uterine fibroids. I've had two minor surgeries to remove those fibroids. My first one was in 2018, and then I had a second surgery in 2022. And that was new to me. My mother suffered from them later in life, and she had a partial hysterectomy. And that's when I learned about the fibroids. That's just something we didn't talk about, we didn't know much about it. And when my belly started to grow in a way that wasn't normal, especially for a girl that was worked out, very health conscious. I had a great diet, and then suddenly my body started to change, and I knew something was wrong. And when I went to check on it, I learned that I had fibroids and a lot of them. And that's how I began my advocacy for women's health.
It became personal. It became personal for you. So for our viewers, I think the very first thing we want to do is, and I'm gonna kind of ask two questions for the doc. Can you tell our viewers what is uterine fibroid?
So uterine fibroids are benign, meaning non-cancerous tumors that are grown from the muscle of the uterus. They can be in multiple areas of the uterus. They can be on the outside, they can be in the muscle, they can be on the lining. And most of the time, the people that have them on the lining can actually have miscarriages from them because of where the baby implants may be being a little too close to the what we call submucosal fibroids. And so not only are we talking about fibroids, but it can also lead to issues with fertility.
And I think that was something very important to bring up because we talk about things and a lot of times people are not knowledgeable. So I really appreciate you for honing in on what that is. So Dr. Sam, same question. How did you become an advocate for women's health? And what has empowered you to do so?
So I think that many of us can probably say that we became advocates for something before we actually realized that we were an advocate, right? You know, when we're younger, we're advocating for, more cake, or we're advocating for more time at the park, whatever it is. But before you actually realize that you're an advocate for something, you are. And there's like some inciting event dealing with fibroids that actually like pushes you into action. So for me, the unrecognized thing that happened with me is that I actually coached cheerleading for 10 years. And through that, when you're a coach, you're really not a coach only. Like you're a mentor, you're a confidant, you're a second mom, you're a little bit of everything, like you're an advocate for them. And so moving forward, I knew because of that time that I spent for those young ladies that I needed to be in women's health. And so one of the first things I would say that motivated me was when I was in graduate school, I actually went around to multiple churches to teach about breast health. And it was my mission to become a better speaker because at the time I was super nervous and I was like, I'm going to talk to these people until I get better. And so as a result, there was a 90-year-old that received her first mammogram as a result of the talk that I had done. That taught me two things. Number one, we need to be in the community.
That's right.
Because I'm sure that multiple times she had been to her doctor who told her she needed a mammogram, right? Like when you're 40 and up, you're told every year you need to go get your mammogram. I'm sure she had heard that for 50 years. But because I had come to her church and I talked about it, that's what was important to her that she do. The other part was that I looked the way that I do. I looked like her. So when you hear from people of color and you hear from them in your community, you're more likely to do what it is that is recommended. And those are the things that really motivated me to keep pushing forward in women's health.
That kind of brings me into the next question. How would you, Dr. Sims, describe the climate of Black women's health in Jackson City?
So we're talking about current, but we can't forget the past. We were oppressed for years and years and years, right? We were oppressed from the time that Dr. James Marion Sims started performing gynecological procedures without anesthesia on our Black women, right? And so when we move forward and we begin to talk about health equality, but we have forgotten about the equity piece. There's a difference between the health, like equality and equity. Equity is give everybody what they need to get to the same point. We hadn't really gotten to that point yet, even though we're years and years and years ahead of that time. So as a result, today in Mississippi, Black women are 4 times more likely to die from pregnancy-related issues. That's from our most recent maternal mortality review report from the State Department of Health. I sit on that committee. 4 times more likely to die from childbirth-related issues. We're also more likely to experience fibroids. We're more likely to experience health deserts. We're more likely to experience infertility. And so right now, we're just in a place where we're still behind because we don't have those resources. We're more likely to be on Medicaid. And so we just don't have the resources that we need to like really forge ahead in healthcare.
So, and coming back to you, being that you are someone that has personal experience, what can we do as a community to educate people on the importance of knowing about fibroids?
So the first, when she was talking, when you asked that question, I went back to a time in the past when I was 17. I was in high school. I was a junior, and at the last minute, they decided that I had too many credits and I had to graduate early. So my mom thought, okay, well, this would be a good time for you to go to the doctor and do the girl thing that doctors do. And I did. And we discovered that I had a cyst in my breast at 17. So doing that, and I'm glad you mentioned education, because I felt like now that I look back on it, at that time, that would have been a great time for my being doctor to educate me on what my body was doing and what could happen down the line in other places. And that didn't happen at all. So imagine being a 17-year-old girl discovering these things about herself and going through biopsy, all of those things, the same things that I had to do with my uterine fibroids, and not understanding and knowing what was happening to me because my doctor didn't talk to me about it. And to be transparent, I have a very young mother, and she left me when she was 16. So a lot of these things were new to her too.
Mm-hmm.
So she was just trying to raise a healthy, successful, growing daughter. And a lot of these things she just didn't know as well as she was learning as I was learning. So to your point, or to your question, it is imperative that we educate, that we have these types of forums to educate women, especially, I don't care how old you are, because I'm 60. So, and that was many moons ago. And now our youth are getting information quicker, faster, and sometimes it's not the best information. So that's how we look to the professional to educate us and make us aware of these things. And I feel like that's the part.
Thank you. Dr. Sims, are there any signs? Anything we should look for that can say, wait, something is not right, I need to go get an examination? Are there any signs that we should look for?
Absolutely. And as a matter of fact, I'll just disclose, I have dealt with fibroids myself. I had to have a myomectomy before I could get pregnant with my daughter and did my fertility treatments and everything. So I too know the place of the physician and the patient. And so it depends on how large they are. But some of the most common symptoms, aside from no symptoms at all, is heavy menstrual bleeding. If you are soiling pads every hour, even every 2 hours, and you're having to go to a size 5 and a top, I actually recently learned that there's a size 6 pad, y'all. I didn't know that. I knew that there were ultra tampons. I knew that there were up to size 5 pads. But when you are soiling every 1 and 2 and 3 hours, a size 4, 5, 6 pad with ultra tampons and having to double up, something's wrong. Don't say this is my normal. You cannot say this is my normal, because at some point you're going to become anemic and need a blood transfusion. So those are some of the symptoms from a bleeding standpoint. You can also do like she did. She started to look pregnant. If you know that your belly don't normally look like that, and it starts to grow and grow and grow, and as she said, I was fit, I was eating right, something is up. If you start to have like unusual bloating or issues with constipation, fibroids can get so large that you have irregular bowel movements. You can have issues with your bladder. There are just so many different signs that, in my opinion, this is what I say to people. I'm the expert in medicine, but you are the expert in you.
That's right.
So you hold that PhD in you and make sure that you let your doctor know what is not your norm.
Back to you, Dr. Steve. As a healthcare professional, how often do you see women struggle with access to, you talked about equity, you talked about equality. How often do you see women struggle with access to quality healthcare and not receive timely healthcare services?
So I actually work at Jackson Hines Comprehensive Health Center. So I have to say that first, because it's a federally qualified health center. We take care of, as the Bible say, with the least of these. And so I see it very often where patients have come to me after going to provider after provider after provider, being treated maybe for the wrong thing. And it's nothing against other providers. It's just a matter of listening and doing a good examination. And so it's very common to see that in the Black community. And then I have to also mention that if it is a person that lives 2 and 3 hours from a GYN or an OB, then it's going to be even more significant that they're not going to get the resources that they need. And so, you know, on a daily basis, I will see at least 1 or 2 patients that just haven't had timely care or the things that they need. And that's another reason why we are behind in our cancer diagnoses and our fibroid diagnoses and things like that.
Sharonda, having lived experiences, describe how often you have witnessed uterine fibroids impact your community. But sometimes we think it's just me. So how often have you witnessed that it's not just me?
So I
Struggling with your mind.
yes, I'm like that. She said me, Bob. Thank you. So believe it or not, it was recent within the last few years. I joined a myomectomy group on Facebook.
Say it one more time.
A myomectomy group on Facebook.
Okay.
And I would read the post, and it was a lot of people reporting all across the world, but a familiar person. And I was like, she's going there? And we chatted about it, and it's someone we all know. And I was shocked because at that point, I didn't realize that a lot of women were suffering from it. I just knew my and how bad it was. And then we chatted about it a little while, and then I stayed in the group, and another person that I knew was talking about it in the group, and then we were trying, and I think we collectively learned that a lot of women that we knew were going through that. And it really blew my mind that was happening. And then a relative of mine that has had them for a very long time and never knew she had it because she had no symptoms. So that's when I discovered. So it's really been as recent.
And in your experience, how often are you doing self-care practices or preventative care or appointments? What is life like now?
Well, life is different now because we are trying to have a baby. And Dr. Sim spoke on fertility issues with the placement of your fibroids. Well, almost 95% of my fibroids was in my line. So of course we know that that's the big issue. And then one of my fibroids was so big that it was pushing against other organs, like she said, that they can affect other places. So I have to be honest, I'm not exercising the way that I should be. I'm not doing a lot of things, but we are working on getting there so that we can conceive.
Dr. Sims, in what she just described to us, pregnancy, the chances of pregnancy, and I pray that it happens, then what will she have to deal with? Whatever some of the, because I know it will be stressful. There will be thoughts in her head, but talk to us about that.
The pregnancy or the getting pregnancy?
Pregnancy.
Because let me tell you. Well, no, what I was referring to is like the fertility procedures, because it's a whole nother ball game. Trust me, I know. I've been there, and I'm in that position right now. So that's why I was like, where you want me to go with this? Okay. So after I had my myomectomy, because of the way, yes, ma'am. When you have the procedure where you remove your fibroids, and as she and I talked about before we came out here, it's the way that we had to have our myomectomies was like having a C-section but coming home without a baby. That was my analogy of it. It's like I have a C-section, but I don't get to bring a baby home. Y'all, that messed me up. And when I found out that I had fibroids, I was a resident, and I knew that my bleeding was just off the chains, especially when you start bleeding onto the chairs in the resident lounge, or you're scared to like operate too long because you think that your pants are going to be soiled when you come out of surgery. Like, it was a whole mess. But to your question, the aftermath. Okay. When I found out I had the fibroids, my first thought was, darn, I really don't want to have a C-section, because at this point, the way that those fibroids come out, especially when they're significant, you have to have a preterm delivery. Your delivery has to be between 36 and 37 weeks, because they look at it like you've had what we call a classical C-section, which means that you are not a candidate for a vaginal delivery because the risk is too high for what we call uterine rupture. And so there's so much more to the story after you have had your myomectomy, depending on how you've had it. So you have your wait time. You're like, I really want to get pregnant. I want to have this procedure. And now you got to wait 6 months for your recovery and for your uterus to get back, get healed to the point where it can stretch enough for you to carry a baby. And then you have to have a preterm birth. So like, it literally messes up your entire birth story, and your birth story matters. Like, you want it to be such a beautiful thing. You want it to be like, I wanted to have a vaginal birth, and I wanted to do it naturally. Not me. I wanted to do it naturally, and I wanted to like do all of these things. And then when you have this myomectomy and you're told, well, now you have to have a C-section at 36 to 37 weeks as preterm to early term, you're like, you done already jacked me up. But then think about along the way, if you start having contractions early because your uterus is just a little bit, it done got beat up. Like, there's just so much to it after the fact. Now, let me just go on into the fertility piece because she and I are the same age. I don't know. I tell my age, but now if I tell my age, then I'll tell her age. We're 41. And so, for me, when I initially wanted to get pregnant, I was already like knocking on what we call advanced maternal age, 35. And so I talked to my fertility specialist and said, like, hey, like, do I need to do these procedures? Can we try on our own? And he was like, well, at your age, we have no reason to be less aggressive, because basically your time is ticking. So the procedure that I did is called intrauterine insemination. Have y'all heard of that? So intrauterine insemination. So IUI is how people will we'll kind of say it. So you have your IVF and you have your IUI. So if your tubes are working and the sperm count is normal, basically you're a good candidate for IUI. So IUI is the procedure where you take a medication to stimulate your ovaries to ovulate or to like grow the eggs. And then you get an ultrasound to determine, okay, when should we take a trigger shot to make you actually ovulate? You take your trigger shot, and then they actually inject the sperm, not inject, but they actually put the sperm into your uterus so that your body can do what it was made to do. So when they actually, how I learned it when I was a resident is they actually take the semen and they wash it down and they only inject the sperm. So it's like 1,000 sexual acts. So basically it's supposed to like heighten your chances pretty significantly to get pregnant. So it took us 4 cycles to do that. And so, you know, and then the IVF, like it's, you know, there's money involved. I mean, it's just so much. Like you didn't think that you was going to have to pay thousands of dollars just to get pregnant. So like fibroids affect us in so many ways, more than just emotionally. It affects us financially. It affects us on our jobs. It affects us with our families. It affects us with intercourse with our partners. Because if you're in pain when you're having sex, you ain't going to want to be doing nothing. You get what I'm saying? Like, I'm just being open and honest. And so there's just so much to it.
That was a very educational moment. Thank you so much for that, Dr. Sims. So Sharona talked about education. She talked about going to the physician and being educated. But at that time, the physician didn't provide any education. So what type of questions should be asked during check-ins with the doctors regarding uterine fibroids to be proactive about your health, about our health?
You know, I see a lot of patients that come to me and they've only learned one option for their fibroid issue, hysterectomy. And when they come to me and they're like, well, they told me I need a hysterectomy. I'm like, well, wait, no, you don't. Let me actually assess you and find out where we are. And my first question is always, what are your fertility goals? And so with that answer is how I develop what your options are. And so I think that every single person should always ask, what are all the options? Not just that one thing, what else can I do? What other medications can I do? What other surgeries can I do?
So if you're somewhere and you just say one, what else? It's got to be more.
Right, because there's more to the story that you ask, what else can I do? And is it okay if I don't do anything? Because that is also an option. If you're not, like sometimes fibroids are found incidentally and you're not having issues from them. And so you ain't got to do jack. That's what I say. You do not have to do anything if you are not having issues, or if it's a quality of life thing, in my thoughts. If you're not anemic and needing a blood transfusion, and if you're like, well, I'm okay with the periods, I can manage it. You know, I take, you know, my ibuprofen, it decreases my flow a little bit. I'm just going to hang out right now. I don't think I want to do anything right now. That is totally fine.
So we have options. Sharona, what is the change that you would like to see regarding Black women's health as it relates to fibroids?
So we kind of talked about that. She and I kind of talked about it.
They talked about a lot.
Yeah.
We sure did.
And I think the biggest thing, and I know we touched on it already, is availability for women to be able to even get to the doctor or have the resources to be able to even discover that they have these issues. So that doesn't just start here. That starts with our government. That starts way beyond us, for sure.
Starting way beyond us, for sure. Tonight, we're here, sitting, Soirée. We're talking about uterine fibroids. What can we do? What's next? What can we do next? Because it shouldn't stop here. What's next? What do you think we should do next?
I do think what Dr. Sims is doing is vital. And I think that is the next big thing. More of that. More of this. I understand that we're here right now, but we're right now here in Jackson, Mississippi. So can we do this everywhere more often? And go into those communities that, let's be honest, I can afford health care and I can get to those things now in my big age. But there are a lot of women my age that don't have that access.
Right.
So let's start there. That's the first thing in my, that I feel we should. And if we educate those women educate their daughters. And their daughters educate their daughters. And that's where we begin to come with it.
I think it's safe to say to our viewers, to our live audience, we learned something. At least I did. We learned something. So, do we have any questions? Any questions for our panel? Any questions from our viewers here, our live audience, and our viewers online? Are there any questions that you have for these two ladies? You gotta have one. At least one.
I do want to make one more comment to that last question that you mentioned. Yes, we're a part of the picture, but our providers are also a part of the picture. I would like to see a more open mindset that racial inequities is a thing. I would like to see our providers begin to acknowledge more, like it's we're getting there, but we're not all the way there yet, because we do we still see differences in the way that patients are taken care of, in the way that patients are heard. We're not heard very well, especially as a person of color. And so I would like to also see the government stop making decisions when they are not medically inclined. Like, there are too many decisions being made by our legislature and they have no idea. How can you tell me that an embryo has rights? How can you tell me that? How can you tell me that you are going to send me to jail because I have discarded an embryo that was abnormal? We have a state that I know of for sure that has now ruled in that part, that and as one state does it, the others start to look at it. I would not be surprised if Mississippi tries to jump on the bandwagon. So now you're making fertility even more difficult for our women. And so there's so many things that need to be done. Legislator, y'all slow down a little bit.
Any questions?
Good evening, ladies. Thank you. Good evening, ladies. Thank you for your questions. When you were going through the brief of the options, if a lady or that has fibroids wants to do something about it, do you mind going into briefly the different options that she has surgically and non-surgically, and giving a brief description about those?
Absolutely. So I'll start off with the person that wants their fertility. They want to have a baby. First, I want to find out, when are you thinking about having a baby? And if it's like now and the fibroids are in the way, meaning the uterus is super enlarged, or there's fibroids that are on the lining of the uterus, the option there would mean that she needs a myomectomy. And the location of the fibroids will determine the type of myomectomy. There's a procedure that we can actually do through the vagina into the uterus and actually remove those fibroids without any abdominal incisions at all. If they are closer to the outside of the uterus, there's laparoscopic or robotic procedures that can be done, as well as an abdominal procedure. Now, as you can imagine, I care for a very large population of people of color. So my fibroids that I remove, the largest one was the size of a newborn baby, 20 centimeters. That was the largest one that I have removed. And I'm telling you, those are difficult procedures, but for the people that are interested in childbirth later, it's worth it. So the myomectomy is going to be your surgical option. In the event that they're not too much of a bother, and the periods are just the main thing, but they're not in places and the uterus is not enlarged, I say leave it alone and just let's go ahead and get you pregnant and get you delivered, and then we can kind of deal with it, with the bleeding and stuff later. Now, say the person is not ready for pregnancy. There are medications that can be taken. So NSAIDs or like ibuprofen, Aleve, things like that. The data on it is not as strong as the hormones, but you can actually use NSAIDs to decrease the pain from the periods as well as the flow from the periods. Then, as she and I talked about, the hormones, which would be like your birth control pills or something similar, which wouldn't necessarily be a birth control pill, those are supposed to decrease the flow from your periods as well as the pain from your periods. For the person that does not want to get pregnant, you can have an endometrial ablation. You can have a uterine fibroid embolization. The ablation is where we do the procedure where you go into the vagina, into the uterus, and you burn the lining of the uterus. And the goal is to decrease the flow from the period, but a lot of people don't have periods anymore after that. And so it's a really nice procedure, same day, in and out. You like, I operate on Thursdays. I'd be like, take Friday off and go back to work on Monday. And then the uterine fibroid embolization is also a same day procedure. It's done by the interventional radiologist where they actually block all the blood flow to the fibroids and they shrink. So no abdominal procedure, incisions or anything like that. Then of course you have your myomectomy, which honestly, I'll be very honest. I don't like to perform myomectomies for people that don't want to have a baby in the future. If you know for a fact your tubes are tied and you know you're not having another baby, there to me is no point in having a myomectomy because they grow back and then you got to have another one and then you got to have another one. So why go through all of the C-sections without a baby? Just have a hysterectomy and get it over with. And so you have your hysterectomy. So those are your options.
I'm extra bad uterine fibroids and I can't on my nephew. And so I was wanting to know when is that appropriate, because I think mine are coming back. I need to check for them. And I was the person, I didn't ask for my nephew. I asked for a hysterectomy because I don't want children, and I still don't want children. So I don't want to have another myomectomy. So the endometrial ablation, what are the circumstances around that that's appropriate for that to be picked as the line of care?
I think that's a great question. So if the uterus is not like severely enlarged, and what I mean by that is, say the person is less than maybe like a 16-week pregnancy, like a 4-month pregnancy. If they're less than that, I think it's probably a good option. If the fibroids are small, but it's just like a bunch of them, I think it's a good option. Sometimes I'll have a patient with just like a little smaller uterus and they have fibroids. I think those are great options for them. 14, 15 weeks is probably max. But if your uterus starts to get closer to like a 20-week, 5-month pregnancy, 6-month pregnancy, it's not going to be as beneficial to you because you still have all of the blood supply going to those fibroids every single month that make you bleed and bleed and bleed. You're welcome.
So I went into my first surgery, my first myomectomy, wanting to have a hysterectomy. At the time, I'm just be transparent, I didn't want to do this. I got married and they changed recently, but so I went into that surgery wanting to have a hysterectomy. I was denied a hysterectomy because I was still of childbearing age and I had no children. So my question to you is there ever a time where those two things don't apply to the hysterectomy rule?
There's not really a rule as it relates to a hysterectomy, in my opinion. I think it all has to do with surgeon preference. And we learn a lot about the risk of regret. And so even though the patient may be saying to us, I don't ever want to have a child, which you did, you know what I mean? And then now you're like, man, I'm married. I wish I hadn't had a hysterectomy. Yeah, I got to get this man a baby. And so, in our minds, we're like, I hear you, but maybe let's try this option first. And if you're sure, so like even with like getting a tubal, if you say, I ain't tying your tubes. I'm not gonna do it. If I say, do you want another baby? And you're like, I'm not gonna do it. You have to be like done.com to me. You get what I'm saying? Like, you gotta be like, I'm done. Done.com, I'm sure. Like, you have to be sure. So it's difficult.
Remember those words. No. Yes.
Exactly. And then when I walk in the morning of surgery before I get ready to pray with the patient, because I pray with all my patients before surgery. No more babies. Done.com. Okay, cool. Let's pray. Let us pray. And so yeah, it's really difficult. That is a really difficult situation. And I think that it's definitely surgeon preference. And we're always keeping in mind the risk of regret. The data is very clear that people under 30 who have opted for a tubal, especially when they say it during labor, like, come on now. You ain't about to tell me that you want your tubes tied while you in labor. Let me see how you feel 6 months out or something. Why don't we do an IUD right now or a Nexplanon, and then I'll catch you in a couple years. If you still saying done.com, okay, cool. Because, you know. Right.
So did you say, and they said no?
I was very sure that I wanted these.
But you weren't sure.
I got married. My husband was like, where is my baby?
Oh.
I do ask about that too. I want to know social things too. So I'll say, are you in a stable relationship? Like, is this, even though it's your decision, but is this something that you've talked to your partner about? And so there's a lot of dynamics there that have the surgeon make a preference that they have. Yeah.
Do we have any questions from our live audience? We have another question. Do you want none? Okay. Okay, go ahead.
Good evening.
Good evening.
If you were diagnosed with fibroids and you were told they were small, and you opted out of the surgery, is there anything lifestyle wise you can do, like diet, exercise to shrink them, or will they just never stop growing? Or can we delay that, the growth?
So the data shows that they grow about 1 centimeter a year. However, just like for heart health, we always want to make sure that, we're getting our 150 minutes of exercise in per week, or as much as you can, as I tell my patients, because, sometimes life gets to life and you miss a couple days. And you want to make sure that you're getting well-balanced diets. You don't have to be on like Atkins or whatever, fruits, vegetables, protein, medium to low carbs. Here's the thing. The more estrogen you're exposed to actually increases the fibroids. And so what people probably don't know is that adipose tissue actually increases our estrogen levels. Adipose meaning fat tissue. So as a result, and now I don't know if y'all have noticed that young Black girls, they start their periods a little bit earlier. They got a little bit more meat on them. It's because of that. It's because we have a little bit more adipose on us. So it's all kind of related. When your fibroids get a little bit larger, you have a little bit more adipose. And that is, like, I've seen some little videos, sticks with like a belly that looks like they're 6 months pregnant. And so the true answer there is we don't really know. But there are those lifestyle things that you can do that are related to good heart health that can also help you with your fibroids.
Any more questions? We have one over here.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you guys so much. And you guys brought up partners. And so I have a question about both of your experiences for you both to answer. And that is about men in our life. What are the ways that men help support you during your time?
That's such a good question.
Or what are some suggestions you have for men to help support their partners, daughters, et cetera, et cetera?
So when the first go round, my now husband and I had to start. So, and he didn't believe me. And it played on him because he felt like there was not an attraction there, but there was an attraction there. So let's just be transparent. We're all here. I bled every day for like a year and a half. So it started off as body and then just full blown eventually where we just had to wait in that. We did hormones to try to pull it back some, but it just didn't work. So it wasn't until before you have your surgery, you go to the doctor, and they take a camera, and they insert it just so they can see what's going on in there. And I took my then boyfriend with me to the appointment, and he went in the appointment, and he saw all the things. And when they take the camera out, you can imagine what it looks like. And for me, it was severe. And at that moment, he then realized, oh, she's not pregnant. It was eye-opening for him, and he went into full, like, studying what it was, figuring out what it was, educating himself on what was happening, and then it was, well, what I keep. And I'm right with him. And he went into this marriage knowing that it could be tricky, but he is a very faith-driven man, so he put that at the feet of God. Because like we said, we went, not only did I want to have a hysterectomy, but my doctor, before we went in, before I went under anesthesia, he said to me, I don't know if you will come out with you. It was bad. And he did everything he could. My surgery was like 6 hours to save my uterus, and he did, of course, but my husband went into overdrive, and he now understands. So when the second surgery happened, he knew what time it was. It was go time, and he understood what I was saying.
That's good. That's good. So, my husband, let me see, we had been married maybe 9 years at the point where I had decided I would go ahead and get a myomectomy. And he didn't realize that my periods were so heavy until I had to start putting sheets in the bed or like towels in the bed to make sure that I didn't like overflow to the bed at night. And like I told him at one point, like, let me go ahead and get back on these birth control pills because I need to like try to get my periods to get a little bit lighter. And he's like, all right, cool, but when he starts seeing those black sheets or towels in the bed, I'm sure he's like, whoa, like it really is serious. And I always knew that I wasn't able to get as much sleep because I would have to wake up every 2 to 3 hours. And it was like clockwork. It was like almost like a guy had given me an internal clock to get up to make sure that I didn't overflow too much. And so, and as crazy as it was with me being a resident and treating fibroids all the time, I didn't know I had fibroids. Wow. So I texted one of my attendings and was like, that's it. I have abnormal uterine bleeding. I need help. And she was like, come see me today. And I was like, okay, first of all, I'm a resident, so I can't come see you today. But I cracked a joke and he's there at the visit. And I was like, man, if it was fibroids. And she was like, Jaylene, I think it is, like your uterus is large. Wow. And I'm like, what? So he was super, super supportive and there for me. And he's like, whatever it is that you decide, we're going for it. I'm down. I got you. And one of the things that really helped me was when I told him, I shouldn't say this out loud, but we supposed to be telling it all. When I was coming into the hospital, I said, look, these are the nurses that I want to take care of me. And these are the nurses that cannot come into my room. And he remembered their names. And one of the nurses came and wrote one of those cannot come into my room. Not because she's horrible. I mean, it was just, that was my preference. They wrote her name on the board and my husband, I'm just kind of laying there. My husband was like, take her name off. She can't come in here. And They were like, well, she's just a charge nurse. She's not going to know. He said, she cannot come into this room, take her name off the board. And so that whole time, I was a mysterious patient to who at the time was the charge nurse. They were like, who is, they said, she was like, who's down there? And they were like, oh, nobody. And so the fact that my husband came through, like I was totally coherent and could have said something, but because I had given him that before time, he took care of that for me. And that's when I knew, man, that man had my back. But yeah, like super helpful.
Ladies, this has been phenomenal. What do you all think? Yeah, one question.
Are there any organizations that assist women with fertility treatments, such as freezing eggs?
I'd have to look that up. I'm not for sure about the freezing eggs part. Yeah, I'd have to look that up. And is there a way that we'd be able to get?
Get back with that person.
Yeah. Okay.
This has been wonderful. This has been wonderful. Ladies, I thank you for your expertise. I thank you for your personal stories. I appreciate the fact that Dr. Sims didn't come just as a doctor. She came as a woman that had a personal story. So, Dr. Sims, you one of us. You know, you're just like us.
I'm part of the
And
crew.
when you have women that come into your clinic, you can relate. So there's nothing like sharing a story. Again, ladies, thank you. Thank you, my brother's keeper, for giving us this opportunity to come out and educate. I also want you all to pay attention to the survey. We have a QR code that is very important. We want you all to scan that survey and give us your honest opinion. And we look forward to hearing back from you regarding tonight's event. And we look forward to hosting more things like this. So ladies, again, thank you to our live audience, to our listening audience. Thank you so much for being in attendance with us. You could have been anywhere else, but you chose to be here with us. Thank you.